Hi, and welcome to this live reading from House Valdis Origins, Xenobia by Naomi Valkyrie, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. My new roommate and I eye each other from across the room. In our society, you learn at an early age not to trust anyone. A lot of the girls here at the training center learned it the hard way. I've always had a kind of sixth sense that helped me steer clear from the worst of the betrayals, but even I have fallen victim to it over the years. The new girl is pale, practically ghost-like compared to my blue skin. Her white hair is in stark contrast to my black. I find myself fascinated by her differences, but try not to let that curiosity take hold. It wouldn't do any good to get to know her when one of us will end up disappearing at some point. The sudden disappearances are commonplace here. No one talks about it. It's understood that when girls disappear, it means they've been sold, and not through official channels. Asking questions can get you a heap of extra duties, additional training classes, or worse, a beating. I'm Erd, the girl says. Xenobia, I answer, hoping she doesn't want to get into conversation. There's no sense bonding with uncertain futures ahead of us. Thankfully, I'm saved from any awkward attempts at dodging conversation when the dinner bell sounds. All of us file into the dining hall with little talking. We get little time to eat, so no one wastes what precious little we get with frivolous chatter. I usually sit as far away from the other girls as I can get, which means the end of a row in a corner. I can see the entire room from there, and no one can walk behind me without me seeing them coming. Unfortunately, it seems like I won't be alone with my thoughts today because my roommate sits down next to me with her bowl of soup. I put food in my mouth as soon as possible so I don't have to talk. But it turns out that the precaution is unnecessary. Erd doesn't utter a word. She eats silently while taking in her surroundings. 15 minutes later, the evening bell rings. Dinner is over, and now we all have to return to our rooms for our nightly pre-bedtime routine. On the way back to our room, Headmistress Xiomara stops us. Xenobia, since you are the senior occupant of your room, I expect you to show Erd the ropes. The chief slave traders will arrive in a few months, and there is much for the staff to prepare. We don't have extra time to train a newcomer. I nod in acknowledgement, mostly because I have no choice. I have to do what they ask or risk punishment, which, if the headmistress is in a particularly foul mood, can be severe. Yes, mistress, I say with my head bowed. A good slave never looks her master or mistress in the eyes unless requested to do so. If Erd fails in her duties or falls behind in training, both of you will face the consequences of that failure. Again, I nod. Yes, mistress. Good. Now get to your room. You're already 2 minutes late for your nightly routine before inspection. I wouldn't be late if you hadn't stopped me. The sarcastic comment doesn't leave my lips, though. If uttered, it would definitely earn me a beating. I hurry to our room, Erd trailing along behind me. It looks like I will have to converse with her after all. The best I can do to keep my distance is to keep things to the bare minimum and only talk about necessary things. Once back in our room, I show Erd where the ground herb and salt paste are, along with the rough cloth we use to rub our teeth clean. While she cleans her teeth, I brush out my hair in front of an old mirror. Then we switch places. Once we've finished, I turn to Erd. The room has to be cleaned before the inspector comes. Floors must be swept, surfaces dusted, cots tidied, and clothing organized. Why do the cots have to be tidy if we're about to sleep in them? I look at Erd, trying to decide how much I should say. Finally, I settle on, it's best not to question the rules. The truth is, there are many rules that make no sense. They are there to trip the girls up. The staff love to find infractions in order to inflict punishment. But I will give Erd at least one night of peace before reality sinks in. Chapter 2. 3 months later. I smile at Erd as we dance in the shadow of torchlight coming in through our bedroom window. The staff is having a party out on the main lawn tonight to celebrate the arrival of the chief slave traders, so we're brave enough to be out of our beds past curfew. The music coming from the outdoors is soft, but enough for us to find a rhythm to move to. Since dancing isn't a strong area for Erd, I lead. As we move around the small area, I wonder when Erd wormed her way past my defenses. When she first transferred to this training center, I was determined not to befriend her. Somehow, she managed to make me like her. I know it's a horrible mistake to form this connection. It will only lead to disappointment, even heartache later. But nowadays, Erd is the only bright spot in my otherwise doomed existence. Maybe it's selfish, but I want something more than being a slave. There are rumors of an underground movement that help women get away from their masters and mistresses. I hope one day to confirm those rumors, take Erd, and run. While I haven't had it as hard as some of the girls here, I know that could change tomorrow. Our evaluations for service roles is coming up, and it can mean an entirely different set of circumstances, depending on what the headmistress decides. For tonight, I will pretend that my life is charmed and that Erd and I are the only ones in the world. Chapter 3. Erd is groggy from staying up with me late into the night, so I have to hurry her along with the morning bell rings. Today there will be no tolerance for tardiness. The chief slave traders have come to decide our fates along with the headmistress. Anyone who makes the headmistress look bad in front of her guests will meet the severest of punishments. I've heard about what that entails, and I want nothing to do with the receiving end of it. Thankfully, we are not among the last ones entering the Great Hall, but luck isn't completely on our side. One of the chiefs, who I don't recognize, has noticed us, and that's never a good thing. Erd and I stand out from the rest of the girls. With our unusual appearance, there's no way for us not to. Headmistress Xenobia calls for our attention and then instructs us to line up in age groups. Erd and I are in the same age group, so we stay together for now. The chiefs move around to different groups, poking and prodding the girls and asking the headmistress questions. Our group, however, is only looked over by the chief I don't recognize. He gives the other girls in our group a cursory inspection, but when he gets to Erd and me, he lingers. I bristle when his fingers touch Erd's hair. I don't like the close attention he's giving her. I'm even more disturbed when his hands start to roam all over her body. I see Erd tense, but I sadly shake my head at her. If she fights back, she'll endure worse than what's happening now. When the chief is done with Erd, he moves over to me. He runs his hand through my hair, and I feel the urge to vomit, but I hold it together. When he pries my mouth open and examines my teeth, I contemplate biting his fingers off. I continue to fight my rising anger as his hands freely roam over my figure. Keeping eyes focused on the wall across the room, I remind myself that Erd would be all alone in this nightmare if I decide to rebel. After the chief completes his inspection, which is really nothing more than sanctioned assault, he walks over to the headmistress and whispers something to her. Being that he was the last one to complete his task, once he leaves the room, Xenobia dismisses us to our rooms to await our service path assignments. Once in our room, Erd asks, "What do you think we'll end up with?" I don't know for certain, but by the way that chief was dressed, someone in the upper class will probably buy us. Erd's eyes widen. Take that back. That would be a curse like no other. All of us know that the upper class have the most abominable tastes. Most slaves that go to the wealthy don't live long. I tug on Erd's arm until she sits on my cot with me. We can't do anything about it right now. We know nothing for sure. Let's take a nap while we wait. Once we get the final word, we'll figure out what to do from there. With a sense of impending doom hanging over me, I hold Erd close to me while we fall asleep. Chapter 4. It's around twilight when Headmistress Xenobia bursts into our room, startling us awake. Apparently, we'd slept the day away. Good thing we had the day off from our usual responsibilities. Erd, come with me, Xenobia demands. Still partially discombobulated from being startled awake, my guard is down and I ask, "Where are you taking her?" Xenobia gives me a hard look and I clamp my mouth shut. Erd follows Xenobia out of the door, pausing to look back at me with a worried look before she keeps going. I pace our room, trying to figure out where Xenobia might take Erd and what she might want with her. Nothing concrete comes to mind, but between logic and my intuitive radar, I deduce that it must have to do with the service assignments. Since we slept the day away, it will be dinner time soon, which is my only comfort. I'll find out what happened from Erd then. Unsettled, I can't do anything but mindlessly clean our room, waiting for the time to pass. Dinner comes and goes, but Erd isn't there. I manage to make it through my nightly routine, but when curfew starts and Erd still isn't back, I can't sleep. After tossing and turning for a bit, I throw the thin blanket off and get out of bed. Pacing our room in the dark, my mind churns. I'm consumed with worry until I hear a voice coming from the hall, then I'm taking over with panic. I can't be caught out of bed. I manage to dive back into my cot and get settled as the door opens and footsteps sound at the entrance to our room. Pretending to be asleep, I can only hear rustling around, but have no confirmation that it's Erd. Waiting a few minutes, I finally dare to crack my eyes open to check and see who is in the room. Erd's light skin practically glows in the moonlight that is streaming through the window as she gets ready for bed. I'm about to say something to her when she shifts and her back is exposed to the moonbeams. There's a raised red welt across her otherwise unblemished skin. My breath catches in my throat and all words leave me. Before I can recover from the shock, she slips into her sleep gown and crawls under the blanket with me. Her body shakes with quiet sobs, but she never says a word. Laying beside her, holding her, I feel a powerful wave of emotion wash over me. The intensity overwhelms me and I cry with her. Somehow I'm feeling her pain and distress as if it were mine. At some point, out of sheer exhaustion, we fall asleep with the tears still fresh on our faces.